Ever heard the phrase, rich as a king? Well, today we're diving into the stories of six figures who built empires that would make royalty blush. We're talking wealth that dwarfed nations, influence that shifted history, and you wanted the inside scoop on how they did it.
And that's the key, isn't it? Not just the what of their wealth, but the how. The strategies, the mindsets, even the controversies that surrounded these individuals. It's a glimpse into a level of power most of us can only imagine.
And we're pulling back the curtain thanks to this treasure trove of biographical sketches we found. It's like someone compiled the ultimate cheat sheet on amassing wealth and influence.
A cheat sheet spanning centuries, I might add. From the birth of modern finance to the dawn of global brands, we're going to see how these figures shaped the world we live in today.
In kicking things off, we have to start with a name synonymous with Wall Street, J.P. Morgan. Everyone knows the name, but I bet most don't realize he was basically a one-man bailout system for the U.S. on multiple occasions.
Morgan is a fascinating case study because he truly understood that financial markets were about far more than just numbers. He grasped the psychology at play, fear, confidence, even panic, and he used that understanding to exert influence in ways his competitors couldn't.
Okay, so rewind the clock. Little JP is born in 1837. Privilege? Absolutely. Silver spoon, you bet. But here's the thing. He also battled chronic illness throughout his childhood, debilitating migraines, a constant struggle for good health. You almost wonder if that forged his drive, you know?
It's a recurring theme we see with these empire builders. Overcoming adversity early in life, whether it's illness, poverty, or social isolation, often seems to fuel an almost insatiable ambition.
And ambitious he was. But get this. His first foray into finance gets him fired. They thought he was too risky. Ironic, considering what he becomes, right?
That risk tolerance was certainly part of it, but it wasn't recklessness. Morgan had an uncanny ability to see opportunity where others saw only chaos. Take the U.S. railroad system in the late 19th century. It was a tangled mess, dozens of companies competing, often inefficiently.
Most investors saw a headache waiting to happen, not JP. He saw a path to consolidation, a chance to create a more efficient and, let's be honest, more profitable system.
And this is where his approach differed dramatically from most financiers of the time. He wasn't content with simply investing in these railroads. He demanded control. He would force mergers, restructure leadership teams, and ensure that his vision, his strategy, dominated.
He was like the conductor, reorganizing the entire network. And this brings us to those moments where the fate of the U.S. economy seemed to rest on his shoulders. 1893, the Panic of '93, then again in 1907, the country on the brink of financial collapse.
And both times, it's J.P. Morgan who steps in, not the government, to stave off disaster. He understood that restoring confidence was paramount, and he leveraged his personal wealth and reputation to stabilize the markets.
Talk about a power move. But that level of influence, it made people nervous. Here's one guy, a private citizen, holding the entire financial system hostage, some argued. And that unease led to a pivotal moment in U.S. history.
The creation of the Federal Reserve. Whether you see it as a necessary check on unchecked power or an overreaction to Morgan's dominance, there's no denying that his actions played a role in its formation. It's fascinating how the actions of one individual can ripple through history in such a profound way.
And that legacy is still visible today. I mean, J.P. Morgan Chase is a global financial powerhouse.
Yeah.
He didn't just build an empire. He built an institution that outlived him by over a century.
A testament to his vision, no doubt. But it also highlights a crucial point about the nature of empires. Their impact, for better or worse, often extends far beyond the lifespan of their creators.
Speaking of empires with staying power, let's talk about a family that's dominated Swedish industry for generations, the Wallenbergs. They're practically synonymous with Swedish business, but I bet most people outside of Europe have never even heard of them.
And that's precisely how they liked it. While figures like Morgan thrived in the spotlight, the Wallenbergs understood the power of operating with a certain level of discretion.
Their story starts in the wake of that very same 1837 financial crisis that shaped J.P. Morgan's early life. Andre Oscar Wallenberg, a young naval officer at the time, saw the chaos engulfing the U.S. and realized that Sweden's banking system was woefully unprepared for similar turmoil.
He recognized a gap in the market. Swedish banks were hesitant to lend, particularly to the burgeoning industrial sector. Wallenberg saw an opportunity not just to provide capital, but to shape the very course of Sweden's economic development.
And that's how SEB, Skandinaviska and Skillbanken, was born. Their strategy, revolutionary for the time. They offered competitive interest rates to attract depositors and then used those deposits to fund loans to businesses, particularly in emerging industries.
What seems commonplace now was a radical departure from the conservative banking practices of the time. It allowed the Wallenbergs to fuel Sweden's industrial revolution, but it also laid the groundwork for an unprecedented level of economic control.
Control being the operative word here. See, they weren't content with just financing businesses, they wanted ownership. They used their banking profits to acquire shares in the very companies they were lending to, slowly amassing a web of interconnected holdings across various sectors.
They were masters of navigating the intricacies of corporate law, often exploiting loopholes and creating complex holding structures that allowed them to exert influence far beyond their direct ownership states. For example, they pioneered the use of pyramid structures, where they would control a parent company that in turn held controlling interests in numerous subsidiaries, amplifying their influence exponentially.
It's like a financial game of dominoes, with the Wallenbergs holding the master tile that could set the whole thing in motion. And this brings us to a rather unsettling chapter in their story, the World Wars.
Like many financial dynasties, the Wallenbergs understood that fortunes could be made and lost amidst the chaos of war. And they weren't afraid to play both sides, providing financing and resources to both Allied and Axis powers.
Talk about cold-blooded pragmatism. But then, their history is riddled with allegations of shady dealings. I mean, even in recent times, there were whispers of connections to arms deals and even dealings with sanctioned entities.
Their actions consistently demonstrated a willingness to prioritize their own financial interests above any moral or political considerations. It's a pattern we see time and again with these empire builders. The lines between ambition and ruthlessness often become blurred.
And perhaps the most remarkable thing about the Wallenbergs is their ability to maintain this grip on power across generations. Most wealthy families, their fortunes are squandered by the third generation, not the Wallenbergs. What's their secret sauce?
They were incredibly strategic in ensuring their dynasty's longevity. They established foundations to manage their wealth, implemented strict rules regarding inheritance, and even mandated that their heirs gain extensive work experience outside of the family business before assuming leadership roles.
It's like they engineered their own success, creating a system designed to withstand the test of time. From shadowy financiers to something a bit more, shall we say, glamorous.
A stark contrast indeed, but equally fascinating in its own right.
Next up, we're diving into the world of luxury with the story of Louis Vuitton. But trust me, the man behind the iconic brand had a beginning that was anything but glamorous. We're talking rags to riches, literally. Louis Vuitton himself was born a farmer's son. Couldn't even read or write. At the age of 13, he decides to walk to Paris to make his fortune. Actually walked. Can you imagine?
Over 250 miles. It speaks to a certain tenacity, a willingness to take risks that many wouldn't even dream of. And remember, this is 19th century France. No safety nets, no support system. He was completely on his own.
Talk about scrappy. He gets to Paris, starts taking odd jobs, and eventually lands an apprenticeship with a box maker. Not just any box maker, mind you. He becomes a personal trunk maker for Empress Eugenie, wife of Napoleon III.
A pivotal moment. This wasn't just a job. It was an education in luxury, in craftsmanship, in understanding the desires of the elite. And Vuitton was a fast learner.
He saw an opportunity to innovate within a luxury market that hadn't changed much in centuries. Back then, luggage was bulky, heavy, impractical. Vuitton introduced lightweight, durable canvas, revolutionized trunk design with flat tops for easy stacking. He was solving problems for his wealthy clientele.
And in doing so, he essentially invented the concept of functional luxury. It wasn't just about ostentation. It was about craftsmanship, durability, things that appealed to the practical needs of a new generation of travelers.
And of course, we can't forget the iconic LV monogram dreamt up by his son George. Talk about a branding masterstroke.
Absolutely. George Vuitton understood the power of visual identity, of creating a recognizable symbol that signified exclusivity and prestige. Of course, that same symbol also made them a target for counterfeiters, a problem the brand still grapples with today.
And we'd be remiss not to mention the darker chapter in the company's history. Their alleged collaboration with the Nazi regime during World War II is a stain on their legacy, a reminder that even the most luxurious brands can be intertwined with morally reprehensible moments in history.
A reminder that behind the glittering facade of any empire, there are often complex and sometimes uncomfortable truths to uncover.
And then comes the modern era of Louis Vuitton, the rise of Bernard Arnault, and the creation of the luxury conglomerate LVMH.
Arnault's takeover of Louis Vuitton in the late 1980s was a masterclass in corporate maneuvering, but it also marked a shift in the luxury landscape. He saw the potential of building a portfolio of brands, each with its own heritage and appeal, and consolidating them under one umbrella.
From a single illiterate trunk maker to a global behemoth. It's quite a story, wouldn't you say?
Indeed. and one that illustrates the enduring power of a brand built on innovation, craftsmanship, and a keen understanding of consumer desire.
From luxury, we shift gears yet again, this time, to the gritty world of oil, and a figure whose name has become synonymous with both immense wealth and ruthless ambition, John D. Rockefeller.
Rockefeller's story is often told as a cautionary tale, a warning about the dangers of unchecked ambition. But it's also a fascinating study in strategic thinking and the relentless pursuit of efficiency.
This is a guy who, even as a teenager, displayed an almost preternatural business acumen. He kept meticulous records, loaned money with interest, even saw the turmoil of the Civil War as an opportunity to buy and sell commodities.
He possessed an innate understanding of supply and demand, of identifying a market inefficiency and exploiting it ruthlessly. And when the oil boom hit in the mid-19th century, he was perfectly positioned to capitalize on it.
And capitalize he did. Rockefeller's Standard Oil was relentless in its pursuit of dominance. He bought out competitors, often at bargain prices, controlled transportation networks, even resorted to intimidation tactics to force rivals out of business.
His strategy was vertical integration. He understood that controlling every stage of the process, from extraction to refining to distribution, gave him an insurmountable advantage.
Talk about a monopoly. I mean, he literally had to invent antitrust laws to rein him in. The Sherman Antitrust Act, it was practically written with Rockefeller in mind.
And even then, he found ways to circumvent the law to maintain control, even after Standard Oil was officially broken up. He was a master strategist, playing the long game, always thinking several moves ahead of his competitors and even the government.
But here's the twist. Later in life, Rockefeller becomes one of the most prolific philanthropists in history. Funds medical research, establishes a university, donates vast sums to charity. Does it absolve him of his past sins? That's a debate for the ages.
It's a question that continues to be debated in boardrooms and classrooms alike. Can immense wealth amassed through ethically questionable means ever truly be considered clean? It's a thorny issue with no easy answers.
From oil to perhaps the most shadowy and mythologized family in financial history, the Rothschilds. Their name has become synonymous with power, secrecy, and whispers of global conspiracy.
The Rothschilds are the ultimate example of how wealth, combined with discretion and strategic alliances, can create an aura of almost mythical power.
It all starts in the 18th century with Mayer Amschel Rothschild, a Jewish merchant operating in Frankfurt, Germany. He understands that information is power, especially in the world of finance.
He strategically places his sons in major financial hubs across Europe, London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, creating a network of information and influence that spanned the continent. They were ahead of their time, essentially inventing international finance as we know it.
And they weren't afraid to get their hands dirty, were they? Financing wars, profiting from political upheaval.
They were masters of risk, understanding that fortunes could be made by filling the void left by governments and traditional lenders during times of crisis. For example, they famously financed Britain's war effort against Napoleon, securing their position as a preeminent financial power.
But it's the secrecy, the whispers of backroom deals and market manipulation that really gets people talking. Are they puppet masters pulling the strings of global finance? It's impossible to say for sure.
They've certainly cultivated an aura of mystery. They rarely give interviews, their business dealings are shrouded in secrecy. This lack of transparency fuels speculation, of course, but it's also a shrewd strategy. The less the public knows, the more powerful they seem.
And let's not forget their legendary wealth, passed down through generations, carefully guarded and expanded upon. It's estimated that they still control assets worth hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars today.
Their influence may have waned somewhat from its peak in the 19th century, but they remain a force to be reckoned with. The Rothschild name still carries significant weight in the world of finance, philanthropy, and even winemaking.
From shadowy financiers back to American soil for our final empire builder. We're talking about a man whose name is synonymous with New York City itself, Cornelius Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt's story is a classic example of American entrepreneurial spirit, but also a reminder that ambition often comes at a price.
This is a guy who started with a single borrowed boat ferrying passengers around New York Harbor. Talk about humble beginnings.
But he possessed an incredible work ethic, an eye for opportunity, and a ruthlessness that would become legendary. He undercut competitors, built efficient routes, and wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty, literally in the early days.
He goes from ferries to building a steamboat empire, then pivots again to dominate the railroad industry just as it's taking off. This wasn't luck. This was recognizing when the game was changing and having the guts to change with it.
He understood that transportation was the future, and he was determined to control the rails that connected a rapidly industrializing nation. He was ruthless in acquiring competitors, consolidating lines, and building the infrastructure that would transform the American economy.
And like many of the figures we've discussed, his ambition came at a personal cost. He was known for being a demanding patriarch, and his family was often plagued by infighting and scandals.
It's a familiar tale, isn't it? The drive to build to amass wealth and power often leaves little room for personal relationships. In many ways, Vanderbilt's story is a microcosm of the triumphs and tragedies that often accompany such ambition.
He left behind a complicated legacy, a fortune, a name synonymous with both innovation and ruthlessness, and of course Vanderbilt University, a lasting monument to his family name. It makes you think, doesn't it, about the lasting impact, the ripple effect of these larger-than-life figures.
And that, perhaps, is the most important takeaway from our deep dive today. These weren't just individuals who amassed wealth. They were architects of industries, shapers of economies, and whether we admire them or revile them, their influence continues to resonate today.
It's a reminder that the pursuit of wealth and power is a timeless human endeavor, full of complexities, contradictions, and consequences that extend far beyond any single lifetime. So the next time you hear about a CEO, a tech giant, a company making waves, remember the stories we've explored today. The game might have changed, but the players, they share a certain DNA with the empire builders of the past. And with that, we'll leave you to ponder the question: who are the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds of our time? Until next time, keep diving.